Conventional wisdom. You know, we've been doing things the same way for a long time, and a lot of things have changed and we haven't realized it. And I've been really realizing it lately that conventional wisdom is kind of a thing of the past. I'm busy cleaning out my back room looking for some paperwork that I still haven't found. And I came across this. It's just a little part. It was a upper pressure sensor. Turns out it's still good. It was off my '09 ISX. That did not have DEF in it. It was a non-DEF truck. It was the first gen of emissions there. Well, it was the first gen with the burner. You know, whatever. And it got me thinking about, because what led to that being changed was that we relied too much on conventional wisdom. Lessons of the past. Well, what do I mean by lessons of the past? The things we did 15, 20 years ago on these trucks are not the same as now. They mimic a lot of the same things, but the problem is that with the computers and everything like that, they may be mimicking it, but it's not that. And this kind of comes to play with something that I was going through online. I started talking about fuel gelling. I just had a tip. Well, the comments went nuts. And I got thinking about it, reading through some of the comments, which I generally don't do a whole lot of because, well, some are smart, some are not. Some are just this and some are just that. And we've all been on the internet. It's not to be taken seriously. And I got thinking that a lot of the things that people were talking about doing were good 20 years ago, but they're not good now. So let me explain. So I get talking about, you know, the real use for certain additives and products and how they work, and I literally read right off the bottle. And guys, well, I've been doing it this way for this many years, and this is fine. And guys are telling the other guys to put isopropyl alcohol in their fuel, and the guys are saying, well, just put some 91 octane in it, and this, that, and the other thing. Look, on a non-emissions truck, that's fine. In fact, back in the day, when you'd start to gel up, we'd put about 3 bottles of heat in, and it'd cure it. Maybe a gallon of unleaded on each side. It's fine. You can't do that anymore. Not on these engines. And mainly because of things like I just showed you with that sensor. This was $300, and it's an upper pressure sensor. And it sat there through codes and mimicked about 9 other things. So why do I say with the gelling you can't do that? Well, because of the emission stuff. These new canisters, you quite literally will turn, if you put unleaded fuel or alcohol into your fuel, you will quite literally turn your emission system into ash. Now, I know those guys saying, well, I do it and it doesn't seem to affect it. Trust me, it does affect it. It may not be immediate, but a lot of these guys that are burning their trucks down in the parking lot when they go into a regen are doing that because they put unleaded gas or they put heat or they put things that were not meant to be in that burner. They're fine in the engine. The engine handles it fine. The fuel handles it fine. It's that little bit in between that kind of makes it a mess. But I got thinking about other things too. I'll show you a couple of CBs here. We have 2 seemingly identical CBs, but they couldn't be more different. They look the same on the outside, use the same mic. They do the same exact thing. They have the same case. They function identically the same. But here's the difference. This one right here is new, and it's completely integrated. You can almost not tune it. It's completely not tunable. It comes integrated. It's just one of the new radios. It's just the way they are. They made them real cheap. This one on the inside is tunable. You can take this one. You can do all sorts of wonderful things with it. In fact, I think I'm going to put my Texas Star on this one. But that's what I'm talking about. Just because it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, and yes, it is a duck, doesn't mean you can feed it the same thing. You know, different ducks take different feed. And the CB is a good example of that. You know, I was sitting there reading the back of a airline antifreeze bottle. And the first thing it says is, do not use this in a system with an air dryer. Like, wait a minute. Almost every system has an air dryer. And that's kind of, I was like, so what's the purpose of it? Well, you put it in an air dryer, it'll dry out, the isopropyl alcohol in there dries out all the seals. It will literally blow your air dryer out. See it happen a lot because guys don't read the back of the bottles. But, you know, it's just like these CBs. It looks the same and acts the same, but they couldn't be more different on the inside. So a while back, what really got me thinking, I was trying to find the paperwork, and it's just buried in that closet over there, and that closet is what nightmares are made of. And it was from my old truck. I had an 09 that was manufactured in February 29th of 08 with an 07 engine. Don't ask, I have no idea. But it was an 09, very last year before the burners. And I started having emissions problems with it. I was very unfamiliar with them. But I learned real quick that if I'm going to get figure this truck out, I need to know how these things work. So I started having, a lot of check engine lights. And so I started downloading the computer. About once every 2-3 weeks, I started downloading. Now, these computers, or these trucks, would regen at the time every 10 to 12 hours. And so you'd have about every 10 to 12 hours, you could literally track your fueling with the engine hours, download it, and see. And I learned something very valuable, that a lot of us were getting taken for a ride because of conventional wisdom. So what I realized was that I was popping these codes, and they were saying, catalyst code. You've got a bad catalyst. And I was like, wait a minute, I can't have a bad catalyst. The thing was cleaned, it was this, it was that. So I got thinking about it. Well, I started looking at where I was filling up. But all the mechanics kept saying, oh, you have to go in and your catalyst is bad. Well, I got talking to a guy, and he was a bigwig at Cummins. I went to school with the guy. And he said, well, you got to go deeper into the computer. He said, their conventional wisdom is saying that I have a bad catalyst. And he laid out 5 other things it could be. And turns out it was pretty minute. And this is where conventional wisdom will get you in a lot of trouble. I started filling up in certain places and testing different fuels, and turns out if I stayed at one particular chain, my burn pressures were always at 3.5 to 4.5. I'd go to a different chain and it would be down to 0.8, which is where you want it, or lower. So I got looking at that, realizing that a lot of these guys are not staying with the times, and they're just plugging into the computer like they always did and taking the first answer because it's the easiest. You have to dig into it. And it's of no fault of their own. They just weren't trained or taught. And so what ended up having to happen is I had to go on this little journey to figure out what my truck was doing. And what I found was very interesting, but it has a lot of long-range consequences if you do not understand what you're dealing. Because these guys were all just taking it saying, your catalyst is plugged. My catalyst wasn't plugged. I had bad fuel. The bad fuel plugged the catalyst, but it burned it out. So after about 3 or 4 fill-ups, you could watch it kind of just sine wave back down to 0.08. My catalyst was fine. So what ended up happening? Well, it was real interesting. Now, truthfully, when I start talking about this kind of stuff, a lot of times I don't get a whole lot of love just because I'm battling conventional wisdom. And a lot of people don't agree with me, and that's fine. If you don't agree with me, tell me. Because I learn a lot here too. We all do. So if you have a good spirited discussion, and you have science, or you have a good idea or a good reason behind why you believe what you do, I'm very interested. But unfortunately, what I keep running into is most of these guys are just a bunch of company drivers who got advice from their uncle who trucked 25, 30 years ago. It was fine 25, 30 years ago. So what ends up happening, what I ended up finding out was that I was popping catalyst codes, I was popping pressure codes. Did you know a pinhole will make that code? They have the bellows pipe that goes between the engine and the exhaust. Guys were saying, oh, you don't need it. Just take it off and stick a piece of flex pipe under there. Oh, no. No, that right there will put your system into limp mode, just like that. It'll derate you. You'll be done because of that. My buddy at Cummings looked at me, and I told him about it, and he says, do you have any idea how many catalysts have been changed unnecessarily because people did things like that? I said, a few. He said, too many. Now, talk about my friend at Cummings. I'm not going to tell you his name. I went to school with the guy. He's a bigwig out there. He's been very instrumental in helping me. So what is he a bigwig? Well, he helped design and field test the emission systems on these trucks. If I had a problem, I give him a call. Knows these things inside, out, backwards, and forwards. So I was very grateful that I knew the guy. So when I had my first instance, I called him up and I said, hey, dude, it's doing this. He's like, well, on the 09, he's like, it's going to be this, this, or this. I said, it's popping a catalyst code. He's like, He said, it can be one of 5 different things. High pressure, low pressure, hole in the exhaust. Your catalyst could be plugged, or it was something else. So it was, and 4 of the 5 things were minute. They were, I was like, wait a minute. Why aren't we starting here? Conventional wisdom. Guys didn't want to do the research. Guys didn't want to do their homework. They trusted the computer, which is always a good idea. And they ended up just spending $6,000, $7,000, and $8,000 when they could have spent $200. Or they needed a new gasket in their bellows pipe. $10. The conventional wisdom. You have to put a lot of these things behind you. Don't get me wrong, the lessons are still very valid. But if you don't put a lot of this stuff behind you and approach this each and every situation fresh, you're going to be in a world of trouble, because you're going to be relying on a lot of things that are just not valid anymore. Well, it's like taking my Torino to the shop. I want guys who know how to do the job, so I find an old mechanic to work on an old car. I wouldn't use them to work on an LS engine. I have other guys for that. Old mechanics, old cars. If I had an old truck, trust me, I'd find an old mechanic. I've got a newer truck. It's got computers, it's got everything else. So I'm a little bit at a disadvantage. But that's, what you have to do, because some of these old school shops, you put them at computers in their hands and they're still kind of at a disadvantage. I'll tell you a story about that. A few years ago, about 4, when the temperatures in Wisconsin got just dog cold, it was like an ambient temperature, 44 below zero, I had a sensor crystallize. And my water pump went out. I just bought the truck, and this is when I learned that the warranty was crap. I just bought the truck, and so I thought it was under warranty, so I had to go, and I had a leaking water pump. Thinking now I should have just taken it to Sioux Falls, but so I'll take it to Madison, to Kenworth and Madison. They get it in and fix the water pump. Well, then I make it all the way out to Toma, and sensor goes out. I got to take it in. The only shop I could take it to at the time, because it was just, like I said, just really cold. It was just a mom and pop. I just had to get the codes cleared. I was trying to make it. I wanted out of there because I knew the storm was coming. Well, the cold. They had a clipper coming in. And I was just wanting out of there. So I go there, and the guys, they have the Insight program, but they cannot get it to work. They just can't get it to work. So I end up calling a buddy of mine who's a mechanic at my old job, and he had since moved on also. Is that right? That's right. And I said, hey, I got this problem. So we put him on speakerphone, and we walked these guys through how to use the Insight program. That's kind of a problem. You have a $50,000 program, and you don't know how to use it. All they were using it for was to clear codes and send it down the road. And they were not using the program to its full potential. So we ended up, getting the truck cleared out, but that ended up not being the problem. I had a sensor crystallize, and that was the problem. So I had to take it over there and take it to an actual, that Peter built over there in Toma, and we got it fixed, and of course it gelled up, and it was nasty. It was, 50 below. So, but that was an example of a guys having all the tools but not knowing how to use them because they were relying too much on conventional wisdom of the past. There is a place for conventional wisdom, like I said, but a lot of times you just have to get with the times because all it's going to do is hurt you in the long run. Well, I'm not trying to ruffle anybody's feathers here. It's a Browning high power. You have to get with the times. Trucking is fluid. Likewise, the maintenance of the trucks is also fluid. As trucks get more and more complicated, the procedures get more and more convoluted, really. There's a certain order to things. And if you're relying too much on, things of the past, like I wouldn't fix my Torino the same way I fix my Crown Vic, especially when a lot of the stuff relies on me using one of these. It's just, the Torino doesn't have any of that. I can sit there and I can find a miss. But on that Crown Vic, a miss could be 4 separate things. On the Torino, it's usually 1, possibly 2. And you just have to, you have to get with it. You have to get with the times, just because, like I said, some of the things that I was reading online the other day were just frightening. These guys are talking about things that haven't been relevant in 20 years. And a lot of these things that haven't been relevant, there's a reason they're not, because they will get you in a lot of trouble. They will create a lot of damage. These emission systems, if you don't delete your truck, these emission systems, you're going to start, if you have to replace it, you're going to start at 15 grand. 15 to 20 grand. And if your truck's under warranty and they found out that you put an unauthorized fluid in, like unleaded, and they can, trust me, they've seen it. They know what to look for. Your warranty is gone. That's not a joke. These guys will strip a warranty off a truck quicker than nothing these days. Especially if you're doing something that you clearly were told, and was told not to do. You can't do things like that anymore. Kind of makes me sad you can't, but so what can you do? There is plenty of stuff you can do, like I said, but you just have to, airline antifreeze. Okay. You can't use it. You're not supposed to use it in trucks with air dryers. But if you got a little butane torch, sometimes you can heat the brake up and it'll pop. Sometimes You can heat the line up and it'll pop. Most of the time, it's just a brake shoe stuck to a. It's just a brake shoe stuck to a hub. You know, you start at the hub and work your way in. Usually, if you take a little hammer and just tap, 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 it'll count. Sometimes a little tiny butane torch, just heat up that hub a little bit, it'll go. It's all about tailoring your approach to what's going to work and trying not to void your warranty in the process. Because, like I said, warranties can be voided really quick. So this is something you got to watch out for. I'm not out here to ruffle anybody's feathers. I just want you guys to be safe and protect your investment because these trucks are expensive. Now, if you have a boss that says do it, and you're like, look, that's not a good idea, and he says, I don't care, do it anyways, his truck, he'll pay the bills. He can get mad all he wants. If you don't have any say in it, well, yeah. But if you're an owner-operator like me, you have all the say in the world. And it's up to you to protect your investment to the best of your abilities because, well, it's your investment. This is how you make your living. That pink truck out there makes me a very good living. But it's a lot of work, and I have to protect my investment and make sure that I do all the maintenance and everything properly in order that my truck perform at the highest level it can. That's what I'm trying to do here. And that's what I hope you're trying to do. Like I said, I'm not out here to ruffle anybody's feathers, but it is what it is. Just get with the times and start learning this stuff because this stuff's here to stay, and it's only going to get worse. You know, these deleted trucks, they're going to go away. They're already starting to nail. And it's not the truck drivers doing it. It's those idiots in pickup trucks that want to sit there and roll smoke at a stoplight. They're the ones that are getting us all in trouble. So, it is what it is. So, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.